This presentation, entitled Transferable Skillsets of Food Safety Auditors, comes to us from Wendy Edwards. Wendy has more than 30 years of experience as an auditor, consultant, and in-house quality professional, specializing in high and low-risk food industries. She's currently the head of food safety and quality for a New Zealand-owned business that employs 1,500 people and generates revenues of around 300 million New Zealand dollars. The organization's manufacturing operations in New Zealand and Australia are SQF certified and export food to around 18 countries. In 2019, Wendy was awarded SQF Practitioner of the Year at the SQFI Quality Achievement Awards ceremony. And with that, take it away, Wendy.
Thanks, Mike. Today's discussion really is around the transferable skill set of food safety auditors. So I guess what we wanted to do was answer that question, where could your food safety auditor skill sets take you? So if we think about this, it's really just one person's story, my story, but as we go through, let's have a think about how it might apply to other food safety auditors. So the transferable skill sets of food safety auditors, here's my story. You can see it's long and weaving, there's quite a bit going on, and I thought the easiest way to tell this story is just to start in the bottom left-hand side there at the beginning. So any food safety auditor that you meet, no matter how experienced they are, how amazing they are, how many decades they've been in the business, started at the beginning, just like I did, with the CV that covered one page, and we just kind of spread it out and try and make it look like we've done a bit more than we have. So before we get to talking about being a food safety auditor, there's that collection of skill sets which are going to set you up to succeed doing food safety audits. So starting at the beginning is technical skills. So a lot of us start with the laboratory work. We may start in new product development, but those basics of microbiology, chemistry, and physical as they apply to food safety, great place, great basis to start your food safety auditing career. The next thing that any food safety auditor needs is some industry knowledge. So for me, that was the dairy industry. I fell in love with the dairy industry because it wasn't just New Zealand Inc., it was actually global. And there were so many careers and opportunities. I felt like if I got into that industry, there would be just a great way for me to build my career and learn. So exactly what I did. But one of the things I hadn't thought about at the beginning with that very technical background was actually the importance of people and learning to work with people and take people with you on your journey. So I learned a lot about the dairy industry in that period of time, but I also learned a lot about how to present to senior managers or intermediate managers or to people who were working in the packing room with the food. My first step across from laboratory, pure laboratory, to another role was actually training. And so as a food safety auditor, training may not be something that you think is relevant, but it's an incredible way to share your knowledge and skill sets with others. And at the same time, I was like a sponge. I was learning off these people as well. So this is something that I did. Not every food safety auditor will have spent time in that period of training, but again, it forces you to think about what you're doing and how to structure things. All of that then comes on down to the wonderful world of quality. So the first time I discovered quality, interestingly for New Zealand, was before we had any standards to audit to. So without auditing standards, really you've got quality circles, suggestion boxes, and just some sort of aimless continuous improvement. The New Zealand government recognised that in order to grow our GDP, what we needed to have was a lot of trust in the New Zealand businesses. They needed to be better at what they do. And they introduced the concept of a certification body. So we had experts come into New Zealand. And suddenly the whole quality movement changed because we were doing internal audits. So this was the first time that I had a chance to do food safety audits. Internal audits for a food safety auditor are actually critical. It's a great place to start because you're really learning the organisation, you're learning the way that the processes flow through. But doing those without a standard to work to is actually really difficult. So the certification body that came to New Zealand, we were really lucky. They had a very clear path to joining as a third-party auditor, so you knew what to do before you got to that point. So obviously you needed your industry knowledge, you needed those technical skills. Now we had a standard. Back in the day, there was just ISO 9001. Obviously things have moved on. It gives you an idea of how old I am. The other thing that they did was they hooked up with a psychologist of many years' experience and standing, a gentleman from Canada, who would run these workshops, psychological coaching around how to deal with difficult people, how to deal with conflict, how to present confidently for opening and closing meetings. That was amazing. It was then you had technical knowledge, and now you had good technical people knowledge as well. And then the third thing they required you to do to become a food safety auditor working in a certification body was to complete your lead auditor training. And again, we were very lucky to have people come out from the UK and put together very good, reputable training courses that you could do. So this world of quality was where I started really falling in love with the idea of doing audits and where that could take you in your career. So it was this sort of bizarre thing where I went from worshipping the auditor that used to come and do my audits and think, wow, one day when I grow up, I'm going to be an auditor, to realizing actually that was something that I could do. And I set about pulling that together to train. So as a food safety auditor, all of these skill sets are valuable to any business. But for me, I packed them up and took them to a certification body. And that really opens the door. So if you're an internal food safety auditor working in a certification body, then takes you to the world of third-party audits. So obviously at the moment we're in the middle of a pandemic. Global travel isn't what it was. We're finding different ways, such as remote audits, to complete these third-party audits. But boy, do you get to see a lot. You know, you get to meet people at all different levels and different organisations, understand how things work. It's a great way to really build that depth of knowledge. And of course, you're bringing with you all of that history and that learning that you've had as well. So never underestimate the value of a third party auditor in any organisation. So this bunch of skill sets now, internal auditing, training, and now external auditing, lead on and can lead on to second party audits. So I did mine in this order, but obviously for your career, they could be any order. Second party audits, I don't know that I appreciated at the time the huge value that they add, but now that I'm back in industry and I want to be the best I can for my key customers, they have an audit standard. Those second party auditors that come and help make sure that we are compliant with those standards, they're amazing. They're something to really look forward to, because that way that's securing that business for us, because we know that we are doing everything that our customer requires. So your second party auditing skill set, you've now got first party, second party, third party, you've got training. Interestingly for me, our certification body had a training arm, and many of them do. And something that may not be apparent immediately if you're learning to be a food safety auditor is that actually that knowledge you can take along then and train others with. So in the beginning, I was just talking about my food safety knowledge, but now actually I was in a position to teach other auditors, which was fabulous. And again, I was learning from the people that I was teaching as well. So I ended up spending half of my time doing audits and half of my time doing training. So training, another arm for any food safety auditor. Where else can your food safety auditor skills take you? Well, for me, I popped in to do an audit for a client, and 7.5 years later moved on. So when I arrived at this particular client, they had a need to bring two organisations together and to cement their food safety processes. This is a great opportunity for me as an auditor, because this is a knowledge area I had strength in. But once I was working for them, what I worked out was actually the risk based thinking, that process based thinking, the ability to understand what could go wrong and how to prevent it, actually applied to health and safety as well. So during my time in this organisation, my food safety skill set transferred to health and safety. And one that I didn't really see coming, but actually worked quite well, was actually with human resources. So again, what training would people need? How might they need it? How do you go about it? So those food safety skill sets that you've learned, very transferable, very valuable to a business. And so now at this point, I've worked the full circle and coming back round. When I'd finished my time in that particular organisation, I did the consulting thing. So 5 years self-employed, working for various businesses. Any food safety auditor is hugely valuable to an organisation. So back in the beginning, I would learn from consultants that would come in. Even now, if I can have consultants come and assist, fresh pairs of eyes, another pair of hands, and a different way of thinking, because no matter what knowledge other people have, the knowledge that you have will be different, and that's valuable. So I had an opportunity to, again, to see many businesses, to support many businesses. So even if you start life as a food safety auditor, consulting is definitely something that has value. This one's perhaps a little bit different, but when you think about it, it is quite logical. So I had an opportunity to redesign a food safety framework for a large organisation where it had been hobbled together over a period of time and really was no longer serving them well. It was large, it was complex, there'd been several attempts, but all of them had failed to date. And I'm sure that my food safety auditor training is what helped the success of us getting a framework that worked for this organisation. As a food safety auditor, you will have learnt to think about processes, you'll have learnt to identify risks, you understand how to mitigate them, you understand those prerequisite programs that need to be built in and around any food safety plan. You have a brilliant skill set to build a food safety framework because you can look at it from the person using it, somebody auditing it, the business itself and what it delivers, what the customer needs. All of those different angles are going to make for a really good framework. So a little bit left of field, but definitely a transferable skill. Which gets me to the point now where I have a CV that I no longer have a one-page CV. If anything, because I'm now at the other end of my career, it's around how to compact things back down again to a reasonable size. So if we look back at the transferable skill sets, we've ended with the food safety framework, but there were internal audits. There were those second and third party audits, that opportunity to do training. But really, that food safety skill set can be applied to anywhere where you're looking for continuous improvement in a large range of organisations. So if we look at the big picture, the question that we started with is where can your food safety skill sets take you? And I guess what we can see is really they can take you anywhere. So perhaps the better question is actually, where do you want to go?
And thank you, Wendy Edwards, for that look at the transferable skill sets of food safety auditors. And that concludes this presentation.